put do not disturb.
Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of the LEXIT War Room. We have a special guest, and I want to say before we get started, thank everybody for joining us, for watching us. We appreciate it. You guys join us every week, and we just want you to know that you are appreciated. Your comments, you guys have any comments, put them down below. If we get to them, we'll read them off. But before we get started, Brother Jesse, go ahead and introduce our special guest today.
We have a very special guest, my friend. Man, we met years ago. I met him first over here in LA. We're both from LA. He's a movie producer. Now he's running out there for Tennessee 5 out there in Tennessee. But he's a good brother of mine. We met at LEXIT, the first LEXIT rally, LEXIT LA. Me and him were both together on a panel. So for all of our viewers, the ones that don't know you, Robbie, I want you to just give a quick little intro, tell them a little bit about yourself and what made you finally get into politics, basically, what made you decide to run.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate being here. So thanks for having me on. But for the people who don't know me, my background really starts with the fact that my family came from Cuba. So that hate for Marxism flows in my veins and always has. But so having that education, that base as a child, I knew I wanted to get into, making movies and going into Hollywood. And eventually when I was a teenager, fell in love with music. So I fused the two together and became a director. I did a lot of music work, and producer, and we did commercials and all types of stuff. But in that Hollywood world, despite, the success of having directed Oscar-winning actors, actresses, some of the biggest music stars, I knew that when around 2015, I saw this pattern emerging of Marxism sort of in this, it was the underbelly of the current of what was happening on the left. I could see all the little signs of where we were heading. And I said, I have a decision to make, because my whole life, my father figure was really my great grandpa. And he had told me, one of the big regrets a lot of Cubans had was not standing up when they had the chance to stand up. And so I had to ask myself, am I willing to have that regret in 15, 20 years of protecting my career at the cost of not standing up? And I'm not willing to do that, so I made the choice to stand up and to endorse Donald Trump in 2015. And I stood strong through it all. And, all the hate that was thrown at me, like I'm uncancelable, because I knew from the very beginning what they would do. And there was nothing they could do to make me go back and assault my own values, my own integrity. So I stood strong, and I always will. And I started to become very active at that point in terms of, spreading sort of my belief system out there. And I've been really blessed to have an incredible following after that, of people who it's resonated what I've had to say. So, we got to a point now going into 2022 where after the 2020 election, I found myself the most dejected I've ever been towards our politicians. I feel like a lot of our politicians have failed us. They've stabbed their voters in the back. And I felt like, if I don't stand up again and do the most I can possibly do, I'm doing a disservice to not only, people who've survived much worse in other countries, but I'm doing a disservice to myself and my family. And so I felt the best way I could stand up was by running for Congress here in Tennessee.
That's what I've always respected about you, because you were one of the first ones, because you came from Hollywood and all that, and you came out since one of the first ones out there being bold and standing firm. That's one thing I always respected about you, and we need more. And it's so funny how you said that you had to get involved, because that, like, everybody knows what LEXIT, that's what even made me, like, so many patriots that I talked to were like, we all say the same thing. It's like, we just seen what the left was doing, the fake media and all that, and they made us, like, we had to get involved. We just couldn't sit back and watch it any longer. That was just so
exactly
amazing what you said. But go ahead, Sister Carmen.
Hey, Robbie, thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to get right into some controversy that's been happening in your state, if you don't mind. So your Governor Bill Lee, on a recent interview with Sean Hannity, Governor Bill Lee stated that all kids are in school, which is apparently not true, and that kids should not be wearing masks, but And that he also said that parents should get to choose about the masks. However, many counties, including Rutherford County, are still going to continue mandatory mask wearing. So how do you feel about what Governor Bill Lee stated on the Hannity interview? And do you have any plans to challenge that and get these kids, all of them, back in school and all of them without masks?
100%. I will do everything in my power, and I won't be in Congress yet, so this is the tough part, but I'll do everything in my power now that I can, activism wise, to make sure that this changes. I'm actually on the board of Tennessee Stands, which has been the organization that has fought this entire time for freedom and has sued everybody across the board, no matter who they are, including the governor, to go after and essentially just say, look, the role of government is not to take freedoms away. The role of government is to protect and expand freedom, and to keep people safe. Now, to keep people safe can be misinterpreted in many different ways, and it has been throughout COVID. Keep people safe does not mean make choices for them and treat them like children, okay? Parents ultimately, and it also doesn't mean you get to assault parental rights. And that's what we've done throughout COVID, is we've seen government assault parental rights and then treat adults like children. That's not the role of government. You know, when we talk about government protecting people, it's really an intention of like, hey, do we have a terror threat? That's your job. Handle the terror threat. COVID's not a terror threat. We've dealt with viruses throughout our society for eons and eons, and, you know, before the United States ever existed. And so we've got to hold strong on this. We've got to fight back against it. I will say this, and I think it's kind of an interesting note going into 2022, and I'm not the only candidate experiencing this. Despite the fact that I have overwhelming support from the people and that I have the most endorsements of anybody, there's nobody even close. The establishment is still fighting against me. As recently as 2 weeks ago, somebody was trying to get me taken off the ballot even. They didn't succeed, but still, this is the type of thing that, you know, a lot of us face who are sort of outside the box and are a threat to the current power system. Now, the interesting part of that is, like, I never intended on sort of pushing back against all these people as hard as I'm having to. They're forcing me, like you said earlier, they're forcing me into it with the behavior. You know, I didn't ask him to go on Hannity and lie to people. He didn't have to do that. He chose to do it. And so I have to respond to that and say, that's not okay. We can't do that. You know, I mean, what we've done to children, just, it's not acceptable, you know, and we still see this in Davidson and Rutherford, a bunch of different places, honestly. The public schools are treating kids like they're in a penitentiary. You know, they've got to wear these masks all day and do everything they're told. It's just not right the way we're treating them. We're treating parents like they have no rights at all in this. So I'll definitely stand strong against that. You know, it's hard when you don't have the office already to be able to kind of use as a hammer to get things done. But we're still going to use all of our activism that we can possibly use to get things done.
Perfect. I really appreciate that. As a parent myself, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and you know, it makes me sick to actually see children out with masks on. And even in California, we see children with masks on, like outside exercising and stuff like that. I think it's egregious and it's disturbing what we're doing to our youth. And I think also the psychological issues that are coming from it are also far beyond. I mean, these children literally don't see facial expressions anymore. You know, they're starting to get freaked out. They're committing suicide. They're getting depressed. And I think we need to free these children, you know? So it really makes me happy to hear that you say that and you have that standpoint. And I was also going to ask you as a follow-up if you had any legislation, but it sounds like you guys are already on the, you know, as far as suing. You answered that question. So thank you so much for that, and keep it up. And I know that all the parents in Tennessee, or at least most of them, are right behind you. So it shouldn't be that hard to get support from at least the parents, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Because I think here's the simple thing is when you stand for freedom, you know, there's one side saying I want people to be free, and there's another side saying I want to coerce everybody who disagrees with me into doing exactly what I say. I don't want to force other people to do, you know, what I do. You know, just because I choose not to wear one and I believe in natural immunity and I've already had COVID, so I'm not concerned about, you know, getting it again. You know, that doesn't mean that I think somebody else needs to make the same choice I do. That's, you know, freedom is I allow them to do as they please, but I will not ever stand for the government forcing, you know, one size fits all on people.
That's right. Thank you. Dangerous freedom. I'm all about it. Brother A-Rod.
Yeah, bro. So we see, like you just stated earlier, you have a lot of support. We see that Rand Paul actually came out and supported you, and we were talking about it earlier, and how you were surprised, weren't surprised, but you expected rhinos to come out, and maybe you didn't know they were going to come out this hard or whatnot. So my question is this: not that you weren't shocked, but what is the strategy going forward? Because we're having the same problem here in California. It feels like we're not only are we dealing with Democrats, we feel like we're fighting rhinos as well, just to get a
Yeah.
foot in the door. Um, is that a bigger obstacle? You think that it's too big to climb, or do you think that there's a strategy where we could do this as well?
There's definitely a strategy. I mean, here's the thing: is that at a certain point, here's something a lot of people don't understand that I actually think is very important for people to hear. A lot of people confuse manpower for power, and in a certain sense, if you get to a certain place, it does become power. But the real power when it comes to political parties is fundraising. And this is something that I haven't seen anybody, ideologically key in on and go, hey, guys, if we build a fundraising juggernaut behind a candidate with the right views, we will get a lot more done than if we don't do that. Because just here's the reality. Somebody like me, I refuse to take money from big tech. I'm not going to corporate PACs and saying, hey, I'm your guy, because I'm not going to be beholden to them. I'm not going to answer to them. So now here's where we end up at sort of a crossroad, though. If I do that, and I am doing that, you need the people to get behind you to a degree where you can scare the establishment with the amount of fundraising power you have. If you can't do that, they won't care. They don't care, and they kind of see you as sort of like, just a loud voice in a room that they want to put a muzzle on. But if you have enough fundraising power, they have to listen to you because you're showing a new path then. That's why you see a lot of people who they do nothing, they're never in media, they're not exciting in any way, they don't inspire people, but somehow, they pull in millions and millions from corporate PACs. And so then the party puts them on they get put in the right, parts of Congress, they get higher positions, they get more sort of say over what happens in the legislatures. This happens all over the country. And so one of the things that people need to learn is be very smart where you fundraise, where you put your money, and don't not fundraise because you don't trust politicians. I don't blame you for not trusting politicians. What you need to do is find the right politicians and fundraise directly to them, not to somebody else that, says, oh, I'll put it in 20 different directions. Go straight to the source of the candidates you trust and make sure that you're building that fundraising base. Help them fundraise if you can, so that they have that power to go back to the rhinos, to the establishment, and say, hey, yeah, cool, you don't want to listen to me? Well, guess what? I outraised you this month. They'll start to listen. That's the real power in the system. If you look at whenever the system has changed, whenever we see new people rise up in Congress and actually take part, even look at AOC. AOC is a fundraising juggernaut for the left. That's why she has the say she has, and why you see Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer afraid of her. They're afraid of her because she also has the fundraising power on top of the manpower. And so we have to sort of recreate the same thing on our end and build that fundraising juggernaut that can scare the establishment. If we can do that, then there's a path for anyone, because then you have somebody who can sort of be like AOC is on their end, sort of a kingmaker on our side for people who are outside the box candidates, and say, hey, you know what? This person has the right ideology. This one does too. They're not the same lawyer from the same school. These are people from outside the box who care about freedom, and we're going to put them in positions of power. But you need to be able to gain power by understanding how the establishment identifies power, and that is through fundraising. So that's an important point I think a lot of people miss, because it's not, the natural answer people want is like, oh, well, I have 1,000 people show up for me. Well, great. The establishment doesn't care. They don't care. They care about seeing the bottom line, that you raised more money than they did from Amazon.
Right. No, that's interesting that you say that, because here in California, that's the first thing. I mean, we're never Jenner. We're not going to get on that train. But we see that the first thing they led with was, this is how much money Bruce Jenner has fundraised, and that's the first thing they do. So right away, certain people, this is our best option. And that's true. For some reason, I noticed rhinos have this ability to mobilize and fundraise, which a lot of grassroots and a lot of patriots have a hard time doing, and that's something that you highlight right now, and I think that's something we should pay attention to.
Absolutely. It's something I'm going to expend a lot of energy on over the coming months to try to put together from all different places. Like, here's part of our problem too, is that, we're all individualists. I believe in the individual, and sometimes we do it to a fault. And so we have trouble with the collectivism side of this, of like working together to fundraise and to build a network. But like, you look at, like, let's say what Obama did. Obama built, that fundraising list and that donor list that really helped down ballot Democrats for a long time after that. And he helped change the entire identity of the Democratic Party by doing it. And so if we're able to sort of do something along those lines, whether it's me as a candidate or another candidate, the point is it has to be behind a candidate with the right ideals, the America First ideals, so that we can recreate the same kind of change within our own party, because ultimately that is what's going to force rhinos to do their job or get out of office. That's going to be the ultimate sort of like, hey, you've got an ultimatum. You're going to vote the right way or you're going to be gone. But the only way to get them there and to actually have that conversation is to be able to back it up with fundraising power.
Exactly. That's an awesome answer. Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, bro, Jess.
Well, great. I forgot to mention it earlier, guys. So all of you guys that are watching, LEXIT, we're endorsing my friend Robbie right here. So everybody out in the Tennessee area, make sure you vote for Robbie. But the question I wanted to ask you, brother, is because I had Anna Paulina on before, and I had Laura Loomer, and your similar situation as them, as is you were an influencer before you got into politics, like all of us, a lot of influencers. And so you know firsthand about what's going on with the censorship and the big tech and all of that, being the influencers, and all your friends are influencers. You know, all of us, you know what's going on with Candace, all of us, how they're doing to all of us. So I just wanted to get your thoughts, because it seems like a lot of the Republicans or rhinos, like we're talking about, that they don't seem too concerned about it, or it's not one of their top priorities. I think because a lot of them ain't even on social media. Only a few, like Ted Cruz.
Well, again, it's actually not just that they're not paying attention. It's that, we're not helpful to them. That's again, when you go back to, does people in grassroots sort of activity matter to the rhinos? It doesn't. It scares them, actually. They'd prefer we didn't exist. So that's why you don't see them fighting for us in terms of censorship. But here's the thing. Even if this wasn't happening to us, if it was happening to Democrats, I'd say the same thing I say now. You have to break these companies up. We used to be the trust-busting party as Republicans, where we broke up monopolies. These companies are monopolies. They violated every antitrust, sort of law we have on the books. It's insane. There's no real argument to be had that what they're doing is fair or above board in any way. It's not. Everybody's aware of that. You look at just like the business practices, even outside of social media, some of the big tech companies like Amazon. Amazon ran at a loss on purpose for years and years and years and years, so that they could build up market share and kill small business in the process, so that they could eliminate competitors, anti-competitive behaviors, what that's called, and it's illegal. And they did that so that then once they had eliminated enough of their competitors, they could jack up prices and turn profit that was insane. And now what do? Quarter after quarter, Amazon has the most insane profits you could imagine. Now you look at the social media companies, we have a very different sort of prospect there. If you look at what we did with cell phones and phone companies in general, that's what we need to do with the social media companies. We need to regulate them the same exact way. Verizon can't hop on my phone right now and say, hey, Robbie, I don't like what you're talking about. You're banned from phones. Exactly. Everybody knows that's nuts. So we have to stop the social media companies from doing the same thing, because that's what they're doing. They're hopping on the line and saying, hey, you can't use us anymore. You're not allowed to have your voice heard in the public square. And that is what social media is. It is the public square. So we definitely, that's one of the areas that will be a major priority for me, is going after these big tech companies. And I think I said that in my CPAC speech at the very end. I said, Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, a new wave of lions are coming to Congress, and we are on the hunt. You guys better watch your back, because you've got a new crop of people who are coming after you.
Amen, brother. That sounds like music to my ears. That's why, man, we need to get you, make sure we get you and other good patriots like Anna in there, so we could stop this, because it's just ridiculous. Now it's straight communist. But
absolutely.
Go ahead, Carmen.
I have a zillion questions that I want to ask you, but I know we're very, very short on time. So the one I'm going to go with is it's kind of a faith and medical question. So I don't know what your stance is on pro-life or pro-choice, so maybe you can explain that. Also, a lot of Christians and other groups feel like vaccines should be 100% always a choice, especially the COVID vaccine, but other vaccines too, because all viral vaccines, that means vaccines that are specifically targeted towards viruses, not bacterias, but viral vaccines are all harvested using aborted fetal tissue.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about, pro-choice, pro-life, and also how do you feel about the vaccine issue and the fact that all viral vaccines are created using aborted babies to grow the viral tissue on, or the viral particles on? And how do you feel about that? Do you think that should be a choice for everybody? And what are we going to do about this?
So number one, off the bat, I'm pro-life, and that's an important value to me. I am Christian. So, but when it comes to the vaccines, I'm very familiar actually with like the MRC5 line where they used aborted fetal tissue in the creation of certain vaccines. Here's the thing though, you don't even have to get into that argument with somebody like me, because just off the bat, without a religious argument, I believe in medical freedom, period. I think that, you were born a free human being. God created you. You were allowed to be free. I think that's one of the great things about this country is that our Constitution, if you operate the country as written, should allow you the freedom to be free, and that means to actually be free. And so I believe it should be your choice what you do. I don't think it's the government's place to intervene. That's not a value judgment on vaccines being good or bad. It's just a value judgment on freedom and how much it matters. And you can agree or disagree with somebody's decision they make with vaccines, but that's ultimately what we all need to sort of be able to agree on, is that freedom is what makes this country special and great. We should never be coercing anybody into, taking a medical treatment that they're not comfortable with. I think that that's something that it crosses ethical and moral boundaries that we're not prepared to get into. We can't play God as government. And so I believe there's no place for mandates and there's no place for coercion. You can't tell a child you can't go to school because your parents chose this for you. I think that's wrong. I think it's wrong-headed. And I think that, we can do a lot better and just allow people to be free and make their choice. I believe people are going to make the right choices for them, and I trust them to do that. And this isn't a criminal issue. I mean, that's really the only place where you really care about, are people making a really good choice or bad choice from a government lens, is this criminal? And when it comes to medical decisions, it's not criminal. So you go into that, goes into a whole different area. The only medical things I can think of that are criminal is transitioning a child. That's something that I think should be criminal. But outside of that, most medical issues for an individual person, that's something I believe we have to allow people to be free.
I 100% agree with you. Sadly, in California, we've lost our right to choose for our medical choices for our children and for ourselves. They even took away our religious medical exemption, which is why I asked you about that in particular. But I 100%.
Well, I think they need to be sued over that, over the religious exemptions, because we have very, very clear religious freedom laws in the United States. And I think that, it'd be interesting to see what the Supreme Court does with that, because I think that, you can balance public health with religious freedom. And the truth is, one does supersede the other. And it's that religious freedom supersedes public health. The U.S. government and the way we're designed was never supposed to have the government go above your religion and say, oh, your religion doesn't count anymore. That's just not the way we're designed. So whatever your religion is, and I think that's something that whether you agree or disagree with an individual decision a religion makes, you should be very happy to have people who are willing to say, I'm going to protect your right to practice your faith. I'm not just going to protect people's right to practice Christian faith because I'm Christian. I'm going to protect their right to practice their faith.
Amen. I appreciate that. I wish it was like that in California still. Maybe that's why so many people are leaving California and moving to Tennessee.
Too bad you ain't over here running for governor, man.
I've lost several friends to Tennessee. I must say, I've lost several friends to Tennessee, and now
I can't. I don't know that we need more people here, but I will say, honestly, best decision we've ever made was moving to Tennessee. It is so. It's like opposite trajectory of California in every way. We're booming with growth. People are happy. They're nice. There's kindness everywhere. We're on a very different trajectory than California is right now. So I can't recommend it enough here. But if you are going to come here, you better go to Starbuck2022.com, make a donation, and become a supporter, because that is something that's going to be critical to this state, is us winning that seat.
Love that. Thank you so much for those answers. And Brother A-Rod.
Yeah, for sure. Every time I go back east, you know what I noticed? There's more churches back there. And I know that has a big part to play, maybe more faith-based people back there. But every corner I turn, I see a church, and I'm like, maybe people put God first over here in California. Everybody's trying to ditch God for some reason. But my question is this, bro. So I know this is a question that you've probably been asked 1,000 times. First day in office, what is the first thing that you plan on doing? You're sitting in the seat and you're like, all right, let's get this show on the road. What is the first thing that is going to be on your agenda to push for the people that have voted for you?
I might drive some people a little nuts in DC because I'm probably going to introduce more bills. And this is sort of the fun part for me, is that a lot of people don't realize that one of my passions would actually be the legislating part of this, which is writing the laws. And so I think I'll end up introducing a lot more laws than anybody else. So I have a couple already that I would introduce, in the beginning, but I think, one of the ones I think people will really enjoy is the critical race theory bill that I've written. It's very clear. It essentially says that if you want to receive government funds, if you're a private company and you want a government contract or you want a government grant, you cannot train your employees with critical race theory. This also applies to, can you teach it? You can't teach it either if you want government money, which means that every public university and every private university who takes grants, because remember, private universities, a lot of them, they're medical centers and science, sort of branches of their university, they suck up a lot of U.S. government grant money. If you want that money, you can't train your employees with CRT and you can't teach it to students. That's something that right off the bat will make some waves and make some change happen. But there's so many things that we need to tackle. I think the most important thing for people to understand is that ideologically, a lot of my solutions to things are going to come from a much more, I'll put it this way. I've thought for a long time that people overcomplicate a lot of our problems. And I think a lot of our problems can be solved with much simpler, common sense driven legislation. We've got to sort of have the media fight happen between us and the Democrats about us adding pork to bills. Bills should be done on a very simple basis that are like, hey, we're doing a bill about critical race. It should be about this one issue. We're not putting in bridge money for Nancy Pelosi in this bill. It's got to be something where it's very clean. We need clean bills. And I think that that's a war we can win in the media if we push that we're the party trying to pass all these clean bills and the Democrats keep asking for all this stuff to get put into it. Why are they so greedy? And I think that's the other thing too, is that part of my utility in Congress, having been a director, is going to be changing the way that we have these fights with them and having an offensive strategy instead of a defensive strategy.
Thank you.
We need to be on offense instead of defense. On defense, what happens is you always cede ground. If you play great defense, you still give up a little bit. You've got to have an offensive strategy. And so that's definitely going to be something that, in some ways, even though I'll be a freshman, in Congress, I think I'll be a leader in teaching a lot of people there how to fight and have an offensive strategy that uses the tools like film that the left uses to push through a lot of their sort of social ideas.
Right, bro. That's awesome, bro. That's what I think first is our strategy. Moving forward, we have to switch it up. I've always said this, when your team is doing bad, you don't go and fire the other coach. You fire your coach. You find a different strategy, you get rid of your team, and you move forward. And I think if they elect you, bro, I think they got the right players on the team. Go ahead, Jess.
I just want to say thank you for coming on, Robbie, and I thank you for even running, because we need some more Latinos. The Republicans need some more good, and especially a patriot like you, and then the influencer just in all ways. I just want to go ahead and let the people know how they could follow you and how they could donate and all that kind of stuff.
You can follow me everywhere at Robbie Starbuck, or if it's on Facebook, just search Robbie Starbuck. There's a, Facebook has kind of messed with us because they deleted my account a long time ago and we just got everything put back together. So, but if you search it, you should be able to find it, hopefully. But if you want to support my campaign, the most important thing, go to starbuck2022.com. There's a volunteer tab there where you can, feel free to send in your ideas through that. You can check boxes on what you're willing to do, whether it's doing phone banking or whatever it is. There's little boxes you can check there, put all your info there. And then there's a donate button on the top right. Click that, send in a donation. If you don't want to do it online, there is a check option, and you'll see the address and who you make the check out to and everything. But, you know, one important thing for people to know, if you are becoming a donor, we're going to be a campaign that uses money very, very, very strategically, and we are going to use it wisely. We are not going to waste your money on BS or on, you know, $50,000 parties. And no, we're using this money to
There's a
win
lot
this
of that
race.
going around.
We're using this money to win this race. Okay, period. We are going to have the most door knockers anybody's ever had in this district. We're going to make more phone calls than anybody ever has in this district. We're going to put more door hangers on doors. We are going to put more digital ads and more TV ads out there. We're going to make our ads, our visual ads are going to be cheaper, yet higher quality than any that anybody's putting out. And you saw that with our first ad with Rand Paul. Because I owned a production company and I'm a director, I can do this stuff better and cheaper than anybody. And so we're going to have that as a strength for us to be able to really do something incredible. But your dollars will not be wasted. They'll be used to not only have us win this race, but anything that we may have, let's say we have any left over, they'll be used to help continue this movement so that I am not the only one there, because we need as many people like me there as we could possibly get so that we can really not just strike fear in the establishment, but change it.
Well, thank you so much. And we're about, everybody, we're going to go jump on IG Live real quick. And maybe we'll answer a few of your guys' questions. You guys could submit some questions for him. But thank you so much for watching. And thanks for coming on, Robbie. And anything you need, because, again, LEXIT is endorsing Robbie. So anything you need, Robbie, come out on any videos or whatever, blast it. And we'll put it up for you. Trying to do everything we can to help you. But thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll go straight to IG Live right now.
Thank you, guys. And I'm definitely going to have you guys making phone calls in my district to all the Spanish-speaking households.
All right.
For
man.
sure.
All right, brother.